Okay, hello everyone. This is CounterYolo, bringing you another video in Star Trek Online. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the economy again. And this could be part 2. I do have a 2-hour video on the economy already on the channel that I talked about last December, hence the background for this video. Seriously, go ahead and watch that video if you want a super in-depth discussion on how loot boxes work in this game. I'll do a super quick recap of this. I'll talk about then the in real life impacts of STO right now and how things have been affected in terms of their timeline of things, and how that's been affecting their monetization model. And I'll talk about those basic adjustments over the past couple of months since that last video came out, and then of what I'm expecting to happen within the next year or two. Feel free to see the timelines in the description. I'm also trying out something newish on YouTube that deals with some of the bar in terms of stuff on the videos. So you might be able to see the bar and see different chapters that might be able to that might make it easier for you to peruse to what you want in this video. I am a bit time crunched, so I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible. Last time on my STO Economy video, I talked about a bit on how Star Trek Online makes money. The big things that they do is they sell starships. I mean, they do have other things. They have, space trades, ground trades, consoles, and as such. All that is kind of like in the process of people trying to get starships, whether that's buy them directly through the C-store, maybe services as well through the C-store. But a lot of it is through the loot box system in the game, whether that's through regular loot boxes or through promotion packs. And there is a post on Reddit that goes through that in a bit shorter depth than the 2-hour video from 5 months ago. Feel free to see either of those things for more in depth on that. The big thing is that for loot boxes, for the most part, that is how our player exchange economy kind of works right now. Sure, there are other things. There's random mission and TFO drops, and as well as a little bit of crafting, but for the most part, the vast majority of things you see on the player exchange in this game come from loot boxes in one way or another. Of course, there's also things like the upgrade system and fleet holdings, which, I mean, for the most part, is there to kind of like remove a lot of the excess dilithium in the game, frankly. Especially if you have lots of alternate characters, that can get pretty pricey after a while. And in terms of all those different currencies in the game, the process is to create money sinks so that a lot of these different items that have economic value and can be traded around can be transformed into things that still have value to the player base, but no longer can be traded around it or have a reason to be traded around. So it's changed to something that has perceived value. Again, that's something that I spend a lot of time in that last video going over, so please see that video for more details on that. But here's a basic overview slide here. If something has economic value, it has utility, scarcity, and transferability. If it loses any of those three things, it no longer has economic value. Now, towards the end of the last video, I talked about a couple of issues that I personally thought that existed in the STO economy. A couple of those included, first off, that low-buy starships costs basically the same amount as lockbox and promotion pack starships to obtain when you're trying to get it via, the RNG way. And that, as I talked about in both those videos, that to get either of those starships, it costs you about $200 worth of in-game currency in one way or another to get a lockbox or a promotion pack or a low-buy starship. The difference is that low-buy starships don't really have much RNG. You get basically guaranteed about 4 to 5 low-buy per lockbox that you open, or about 10 low-buy per promotion pack that you open. So your 20,000 your 20,000 Zen or $200 USD is pretty consistent with low-buy stuff. However, lockbox and promo, there is no reliability there. Even though the probabilities are roughly figured out at this point, there's a tiny bit of variability between a lot of us that have tried to figure it out. But there is a kind of rough range, and that's why there's certain pricings for different things. The reason why lockbox and promotion packs are valued so much differently, though, is just because promotion packs have much less consolation prizes in the journey to get that promotion pack starship. Hence, the starship has to be worth much more to get the recoup back on your investment of trying to get that starship. Additionally, alongside that, Cryptic didn't really have any options for directly purchasing low buy, lockbox, and promotion pack starships. There wasn't consolation for loot box losers, which is still unfortunately the case today. And that one of the most efficient lithium generation, and thus one of the easiest ways to earn lots and lots of Zen in the game, was through something called Admiralty farming, which honestly made it feel much more like a mobile game that you just logged in daily to do your little Admiralty stuff, and then you didn't even fly around in your starship. You didn't even have to. Cryptic has changed that a bit, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, when it comes to how the game has changed a bit, the coronavirus has impacted the entire world at this point. A lot of economies were slowed down almost to a halt, depending upon your neck of the woods and how close you were to populated areas, and how much food storage and how your area was kind of like based around how much you were affected and how quick you're able to basically get back to normal life again. But this has had very widespread economic impacts. This isn't really the channel to talk about it, but basically there were some people who have made some money off of it. A lot of bigger corporations have made a bit of money, like Walmart and such. Many of the regular people have lost their jobs, or have had pay cuts. Even in my state health department, there's already a lot of budget cuts in process right now. Fortunately, my particular position is funded through federal grants, which haven't really been affected yet. So fingers crossed that nothing's going to happen to my job. But we'll see. I mean, of course, also I might do something stupid and my coworkers get mad at me. Who knows? Things could always happen. In terms of Star Trek Online itself, especially for Cryptic Studios, obviously they've had a lot of delayed tech support, as more people have actually had time to play the game recently. Plus, with other things, it's just been a lot slower for them to try to deal with things. It's a relatively small group for an MMO that they're working on right now. It's kind of surprising when you actually start looking at the numbers, but alongside that, a lot of their creative team are working from home, and they don't have the same type of tools as they would in their normal office and desks and such. So a lot of that stuff is much slower. And so based upon obviously the directives and that they've been receiving from Perfect World Entertainment over the past few years, is that they have to release their lockboxes basically every 3 to 4 months. That's something that's been super consistent for them. And so when they have to make a new starship or whatever, new traits, that's the priority over everything else, which is also why, especially with the Legendary Bundle being released recently, that's why we haven't seen any new single purchase C-Source starships in a long time. They're limited manpower, and less efficient manpower has to go towards the stuff that their overlords basically tell them to do. So it's just the way it is. They're obviously doing what they can, but again, as well, they're still real people. A lot of them live in California, where it's not exactly a cheap place to live, and they still need to pay bills as well. And so even though there's been a lot of outrage on Reddit, especially, and Twitter and such, they're like, why are you releasing these really expensive things during this time when all of us are suffering? Some people actually are doing pretty well, and Cryptic Studios still needs to make money. It's the way it is. They can't just be like, oh well, let's just not make money for the next 6 months. They still need to try to make something, which is why they've had experiments like having promotion starships in the low buy store and having the Mods Market Choice Pack, things that were very much lower effort on their part, and they wish it was less of adding stuff in the game and more of just building more interfaces to sell things differently. which is a bit cheaper for them to do than to create something from scratch. Now, as for the recent adjustments, I'll just kind of try to get into this. Over the past couple months, the first big thing is low-buy starships. This is something that I made a big emphasis on in the last video. First off, because of the recent 4-part event that's going on, getting a low-buy starship is actually completely doable and earnable for a free-to-play player, especially with that 4-part event, and that it's not limited to that you only earn so much low-buy per event. If you log in, every day during an event, I think there's people at this point that are already earning the low-buy starship at this point. Of course, the two options is a C-Store token plus 200 low-buy or 1,000 low-buy crystals. And now, low-buy is still generally valuable. Whenever I get low-buy, I basically always use it for consoles, or for or for ground stuff. Like if I have a science tune, getting the Zinkethi 2-piece, the shield and the weapon. For that 2-piece of extra stuff for my kit modules is pretty nice. Mainly on my science tunes, not on the other ones, but for my science tunes, it's really nice. But yeah, a C-Store token is still nice as well. It just depends upon what you're really wanting to go for. And so because of that, when I initially heard that, I'm like, oh, this is going to make low-buy even lower in terms of its value. But they did another thing that of adding promotion pack starships in the low-buy store as very limited types of things, which has actually made low-buy starships actually go up in price. In fact, there's people complaining, I think it was last month, that they're like, why is the Vengeance like 300 million energy credits? Like, I thought like 2 months ago it was under 200 million. Well, the big thing going on, frankly, is when you think about it, most of the people that are selling low-buy starships are also people that open a bazillion lock boxes or promotion packs. They're the ones that have a gigantic surplus of low-buy crystals in this game. And so for a lot of them, they're just looking at, okay, for them, a lot of them were like selling like Vengeances and X's just because they were easy things to sell. With these now in place, a lot of them are like, well, sure, I'll wait for the next promotion pack starship to go in the low-buy store, and I'll put a lot of my low-buy crystals towards getting a lot of those. So as thus, sure, those particular low-buy or promotion pack starships are going down in price, but because there's less people now actually selling low-buy starships, lower supply, and a supply demand model, if there's a lower supply, even though the demand is the same, that's actually going to make this, well, people are going to raise the price. That's just what it comes down to. Now, yes, that also means with a higher price that people aren't going to purchase as many, but that's okay because there's less of a supply for selling the starships at that particular time. So basically, as long as Cryptic continues to occasionally add a promotion starship for a limited amount of time in the low-buy store, low-buy starships, the regular low-buy starships that are consistent throughout there will continue to have a little bit higher pricing than they did before. If they ever stop doing that, they think it's not worthwhile anymore, then the low-buy store starships, the regular ones, will go down in price back to probably around where they were before. Maybe a little bit higher, just because there'll still be those that are still antsy, trying to hold out to see, hey, is there going to be another promotion starship in the low-buy store? Then that would be nice. This also helps free to play, by the way, as well, because this basically means for your 1,000 low-buy, you can base, and whenever these go in the low-buy store, typically it's on a sale, and so it's I think like the last two were each like 960 low-buy, which means that with your 1,000 low-buy earned as one of your options, you could basically sell the promotion pack starship or promotion starship that was in the low-buy store and basically get any lockbox starship that you wanted from the exchange. As long as it's a regular lockbox starship, you'd be able to have the energy credits to afford basically any of them in the game. Of course, assuming that you have the energy cap increase purchased in the C-Store. Another change was Admiralty farming. This is something that I have talked about a lot on the channel as well. I nicknamed this, press F to earn dilithium. Basically, for a lot of players, this was unfortunately the most efficient way to earn dilithium. Yes, you can log in and play other stuff to get dilithium, but the fact that you could simply like spend less than a minute per character and get a lot of dilithium for your time was kind of ridiculous. When this is Star Trek, you should be flying your starship, right? Or exploring strange new worlds, figuring things out, solving puzzles, making lives better, or if you're Klingons, Romulans, doing sabotage, conquering worlds, something like that. And oh yeah, let's just click some buttons, go to the next captain, click some buttons, earn dilithium. It just didn't. It's not something that I really felt was really the spirit of Star Trek Online. And so the changes that they did basically was it pretty much makes it so that whenever you're doing stuff in the game, you get more for your time. And I think that's, and that's my opinion, that's a good change. Now it does hurt a lot of those people. In fact, this did hurt me. By the way, my dilithium income is significantly reduced, which is fine. In fact, I'm going to be getting rid of one of my accounts soon anyway. But generally speaking, for your daily active free-to-play players, or just daily active players in general, as long as you're about just doing stuff inside the game each day, which is what Cryptic Studios wants, by the way. If you only have a couple of characters, this is actually going to be more dilithium for you. It's just that if you had a bazillion characters, this is a downgrade. And that's where a lot of the outrage on Reddit came from, frankly. And also, because of this change, the dilithium Zen exchange price is not at the 500 ceiling like it has been for the past little while before this, which is good. When something's at a price ceiling, there is something wrong. The other big thing that happened during this time is that we've started to get options for directly purchasing low-buy lockbox and promotion pack starships. This first version was the Legendary Bundle, which were different ships, but they had some of the same iconic skins as many ships from the exchange in some fashion. Especially the TOS Connie, even though it's different stats, whatever. For a lot of players, they're like, of course, I'll spend $200-300 to fly that ship. And I've talked with many people that are like, yes, if they have a TOS Connie in a pack, I will buy it. And they definitely made a lot of money off of that. I've talked about that in a lot of comments. Just look through the comments section in a couple of other videos. I've talked pretty in depth with a couple of you on this. I think maybe that was three emails, but they definitely made their money off of this. But the other thing that they did because of current situations is that they added a choice pack in Mud's Market. Now, in my opinion, the things to do is to get the Temporal Destroyer, Temporal Science Vessels, and the Amari class Smuggler's Heavy Escort, which is a destroyer anyway, but because the other things are not worth it for the price. But those ones are actual low-buy lockbox and promotion starships that are in the C store in a different way. And it's different than just the single starship selling. They added that as well in Mud's Market, which is interesting. It is very, very interesting how they've been starting to tweak what their pricing is going to be for a lot of these different types of starships in the game. And in my opinion, that pack is actually a pretty decent value. As I've talked about in several videos, at this point, for many of the starships in this game, especially for a lot of the pack ones, if you have a Romulan starship, well, then that can normally be usable by your KDF and Federation allies. In this circumstance, it's actually not the case. These are the starships that are the exceptions inside of the game. As you can see, the Temporal Science Vessels from the exchange and the Temporal Destroyers from the exchange are exceptions still to this day inside of the game. So if we use the exceptions from my Legendary Bundle video that if every ship is worth $30, and each one of those main elements, performance, looks, starship tray, starship console, are all worth 25% of that, then we can do, for instance, for the legendary bundle, that's worth about $600. And this market choice pack, it's worth about 200. At least in terms of, if we assume that 100 Zen is $1. That's a pretty reasonable assumption. Yes, if you buy lots of Zen at once through the Art Game store, you can get lots of extra bonus Zen beyond that. So actually can be a little bit less costly than this, but this is just rough math, easy math to think about. And because in theory, if you got a temporal destroyer off of the exchange, it's not a ship that you could use for all of your captains. If you bought the Ramen version, it's only usable on Ramen captains. And so for me, unfortunately, the performance and trades of console stuff is worth it for all of them. And that's why it's still at the same price as what the expected cost of this would actually be. This is different than like the flagship mega bundle, which you could buy the Ramen version and get the trading console that you're wanting. And you don't need to buy the Federation Tactical version. Just buying just gets repeats of those same trades, and so you have a lessened value. And so it's about 2/3 the value of what you would typically expect. And basically all the other mega bundles are at half the value, because those ones even have the exact same bridge off you're seeing between different starships. So when it comes down to these changes, and I'm just gonna try to quickly get through this. With these big changes that have happened the past couple months, the target audience, basically people that are winners here, true free-to-play players, especially ones that log in daily, because they can now finally earn exchange starships, which is pretty cool. Alt and Nidus players also win, because if they have a bazillion characters, being able to get more of these lockbox type of starships to buy once and use them for all the characters makes them much more affordable to outfit all of those different captains, as well as for players that don't like to support the gambling system at all, which I've met several of them in the game too, that they feel that everything on the player exchange is that in some fashion. And so I've met players that refuse to buy space and ground trades, because basically all of them come from lockboxes in some fashion. So it'd be cool if Cryptic adds some options for them too in the future beyond the couple of limited options that they've added recently. People that aren't the target audience, unfortunately, weekend warrior players are players that basically just play on the weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And because in order for you to finish a lot of these different events going on, you unfortunately have to pay money. They have changed the event formats to make it worse for them, because they used to be able just to play through a couple of the same event throughout a couple of years and get the stuff that they wanted. That's not the case anymore. Additionally, with these changes, it's not as good for veteran players who might already own all of the starships, get new starship when it's released, and don't play alternate characters. There are many veteran players that are like this, and for them, yeah, this stuff is not going to be worth it to them. Not everything that's released in a video game is going to be for all players. There are many different types of players, and I think that's okay. Then not everything is going to be for everyone. Now, as for future adjustments, as for some big things for the economy, for loot boxes, you can expect loot boxes to be released on a quarterly basis. It's basically been that way for a very long time. Every 3 to 4 months, there's a new lockbox, and that's where your newest things in the game is going to come from. In terms of some old things, Mud's Market's going to have some old stuff, especially stuff that's unpopular, at least from their end-game metrics. I personally think that a lot of if they add more choice packs, that they'll try to add one desirable starship in there just to get them to sell, and then they'll have the other starships not be as popular in there, because they're like, well, maybe thematically these things will fit in, and then they sell and they make a lot of money off of it. And in the low-buy store, I do expect to continue limited time releasings of promo starships in there, based on ones that are not that popular. I would imagine the Sona science store that's probably going to show up in there at some point. It's not super popular like at all. Like I basically never see that ship, so that's probably going to show up there at some point. Now, hopefully, and this is just big hopefullys here. Hopefully, they add some better constellation for loot box losers. It's indirectly addressed with promo ships in the low buy store. If they're smart about it, what the low buy that they get if they don't get a loot box, which you know, it's like a 37% chance of that. If they spent like 20,000 Zen in the game, that they might still be able to sell a promo ship and get the lockbox ship that they actually want. I hopefully they add a better system for them so that things are better for them in the long term, because there are a lot of people like that. There are a lot of people like that. Not everyone can be Darkblade and like reliably get Starships super quickly with just a couple of master keys. I don't know how you do it, Darkblade. Anyway, hopefully they also add account unlocking for existing low buy and loot box Starships. We asked a long time to have lockbox Starships released in the C store, and now we're starting to see that. So hopefully, if we complain long enough, maybe they'll actually do it. And then, of course, for those that are against anything that's reminiscent of gambling, hopefully they add more C-store options for Starship trades, ground trades, duty officers, and exchange-specific consoles. They've added some stuff in the Mutts market for some of the old events. But it'd be cool if they added maybe some stuff in there as well for specific space trades and ground trades that are like, account unlocked, things like Into the Breach, Terran targeting systems, stuff like that. That's, it's useful to have for a lot of characters, but can get expensive after a while. Especially, maybe as a tank player, having attack pattern Delta Prime for multiple characters can be pretty pricey after a while. But yeah, that's basically it for this video. I did manage to finish this before I had to start work, so that's pretty awesome. Make sure to stay safe and stay healthy. Even as people are starting to return to work and try to have a somewhat normal life again, as people are starting to search for work, for those that unfortunately have gotten laid off during this time, make sure to, be nice to each other, support each other, and be understanding. Like, we are in a strange time right now. And yeah, if we, take the Star Trek approach and have an optimistic view of the future, I think we will get through this. And life will get better. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to comment on how you felt this video was. I've been a little pressured with work as of late, and so things have been delayed on the channel. Also, with the thing with Cryptic banning me for a week, I've been a little bit less motivated to make videos, unfortunately. It's just the way it is for me. Every single time I've tried to make a video like this, it's just been unmotivating. Hopefully that changes. If not, I will let you all know. I do have plans for more videos in the near future, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.